calm geography of Virginia. Settle into stillness. Let the pace of the world slow just a little. Beyond your window, the land stretches quiet and familiar. Long fields, soft hills, and faraway ridgelines where the sky leans low toward the earth. This is Virginia, a landscape shaped by water, by stone, by time itself. From the Atlantic's whispering waves to the silent peaks of the Appalachians, its story unfolds not in haste, but in rhythm, gentle, enduring, and full of calm. Tonight, we will travel across this landscape, east to west, sea to mountain, exploring the patterns that form its beauty. You will hear of rivers and ridges, of bays and valleys, of deep time resting within the rocks beneath your feet. There is no need to remember each name or fact. Just listen. Let each image drift by like clouds across the horizon, slow and weightless. Feel the rise and fall of the land matching the rhythm of your breath. The geography of Virginia is not only about place, it is about peace. It invites stillness, reflection, and a sense of belonging within the earth's grand design. So close your eyes, breathe, and begin this quiet journey through Virginia. A journey through light, land, and time, where every valley holds a story, and every mountain hums softly with the patience of the world. Virginia is a state of quiet balance and gentle transitions, stretching from peaceful Atlantic shores to the tall, time-worn ridges of the Appalachian Mountains. Its geography unfolds like a slow journey inland. Each landscape tells a story of waves, of forests, of soft rolling hills that invite the mind to settle. From east to west, Virginia drifts across about 430 miles. It's a distance that connects two very different worlds, the sea and the mountains, tied together by rivers, valleys, and plains. Traveling across the state feels like watching a painting change in texture and tone, from the hazy blues of the coast to the deep greens of the highlands. Virginia lies gently between regions, both mid-Atlantic and southeastern, bridging two temperate worlds. This meeting of climates shapes its rhythm of seasons. Summers are warm and full of light, while autumn spreads quiet color across the forests. In the mountains, winter softens into silence, and by spring, life hums back through the valleys and along the streams. To the north, Virginia touches the borders of Maryland and the capital city, Washington, D.C. The Potomac River winds softly between them, carrying reflections of history and of the open sky. Centuries of travelers crossed that river, marking quiet transitions between one state and another, one story and the next. On the eastern edge, the Atlantic Ocean forms Virginia's most open boundary, a horizon that seems to stretch forever. Here, the rhythm of the waves mirrors the steady breathing of the earth itself. From the dunes of the eastern shore to the wide Chesapeake Bay, the ocean gives Virginia both calm and continuity, its own steady heartbeat at the water's edge. To the south, North Carolina and Tennessee share their borders, two states with kindred landscapes and familiar accents in the hills. Across these southern lines, the air seems to warm slightly, and the land rolls out into gentle farmland and mountain coves. Each connection reminds Virginia of its place within a broader southern landscape, one of shared rivers, forests, and quiet hospitality. Turning westward, Kentucky and West Virginia frame Virginia's final edges. Beyond those borders, the land becomes rugged, ridged, and full of quiet mystery. These mountains have watched over centuries of change and still offer the same stillness to anyone who pauses and listens. Old trails still trace their paths through the ridges, and the wind there carries the scent of pine and the whisper of distant rain. Altogether, Virginia spans about 42,774 square miles, an area vast enough to hold beaches, mountains, forests, and gentle plains all within one state. For those who wander within it, the variety feels endless, yet always connected by a subtle harmony. Every region seems to lead naturally into the next. By size, Virginia ranks around the 35th largest of the United States. Not vast, not small, but comfortably in between. Large enough to hold diversity, small enough to feel intimate and familiar. You could drive across it in a day, yet spend a lifetime discovering its corners and hidden valleys. And if you look closely at Virginia's outline on a map, its shape appears irregular, almost like a piece of coastline carved by time. Those curves and edges tell of old boundaries shaped by rivers, by early explorers, and by the gentle disagreements of history. Over centuries, nature and human hands together defined its form, following waterways, ridgelines, and forgotten treaties. Each twist along its border is a trace of the past, guiding us through the story of how this land became what it is today. Virginia's geography is more than a collection of landscapes. It is an unfolding rhythm of earth and history. From ocean to mountain, from plain to ridge, every part contributes to a sense of calm continuity. A steady reminder that time, nature, and place can coexist in harmony. Virginia's land unfolds like a gentle staircase rising westward from the sea. Each of its 5 major physical regions carries its own texture, its own quiet rhythm. Together, they form a landscape of balance, from the whispering waves of the Atlantic to the patient mountains that stand guard in the far west. The first region, reaching farthest east, is the Atlantic coastal plain, often called the tidewater. Here, land meets ocean in the most delicate way. Low and level, the tidewater feels suspended between water and sky. Marsh grasses sway along winding creeks, and the salt air carries the sound of gulls over still estuaries. The Chesapeake Bay opens wide, collecting the flow of rivers that travel from deep within the state. This region breathes with the tides, gentle rhythms of water rising and falling day after day, shaping the edges of Virginia's shore. Moving westward, the land begins a subtle climb into the Piedmont. The name itself means foot of the mountain, and that's exactly what it feels like. A broad, quiet expanse of rolling hills, soft valleys, and fertile red soils. In this region, forests mingle with farmland, and the pace of life seems guided by the same slow rise and fall as the land itself. The Piedmont has long been a meeting place, a middle ground between the coastal plain's calm waters and the rocky ridges beyond. Beyond the Piedmont, the horizon begins to lift more dramatically into the Blue Ridge Mountains. These ancient peaks form Virginia's spine, marking the slow transition from the lower east to the rugged west. Their soft blue tint, seen from a distance, comes from light scattered through forested slopes and the haze of moisture rising after rain. Here the air cools and thins slightly. Streams grow narrow, tumbling through hollows and over moss-covered stones. The Blue Ridge feels timeless, a landscape that invites stillness, perspective, and quiet awe. Past these mountains lies a region shaped by long valleys and repeating ridges, the Valley and Ridge Province. This part of Virginia stretches lengthwise along the western part of the state, where the land folds gracefully like waves frozen in stone. Broad valleys open between parallel mountain lines, green and fertile, threaded with rivers such as the Shenandoah. Here, settlement followed the contours of the earth, towns forming naturally at the feet of ridges and beside cool, winding streams. The pattern of valleys and ridges gives this region a gentle rhythm all its own, echoing the pulse of nature through every season. At the far southwest, Virginia's landscape reaches its quiet crescendo in the Appalachian Plateau. This region is high, wooded, and shaped by ancient forces of uplift and erosion. The land here feels more enclosed, more secretive. A world of forested slopes, narrow hollows, and scattered highland meadows. Streams have carved deep channels into the plateau over ages, leaving cliffs and ledges that appear suddenly between stands of oak and pine. Life here often feels deeply connected to the land, quiet, enduring, and rooted halfway between earth and sky. Across all these regions, Virginia rises smoothly from the edge of the Atlantic to the shadowed crests of the Appalachians. A climb that happens so gradually, you might not notice it from mile to mile. The step upward from east to west is nature's way of marking progress, from salt marshes to mountains, from sea level to summits. Along the coast, the low, flat terrain makes the horizon feel boundless. Rivers widen there, their paths slowed by the nearness of the sea. In the central areas, the land begins to lift gently. Rolling hills stretch outward like soft waves on a vast green sea. This is the Virginia of farms, vineyards, and quiet roads lined with oak and sycamore. And then, in the west, the world seems to gather itself into curves and cliffs again. The rugged mountains rise steadily, shaped by time and pressure, crowned with forests and mist. Here, the air feels older, the wind more insistent, reminding every traveler of how the land once formed, not in haste, but through countless centuries of patient change. Together, these 5 regions, the coastal plain, the Piedmont, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Valley and Ridge, and the Appalachian Plateau, paint a portrait of Virginia that is both diverse and harmonious. Each region supports the next, stepping upward in quiet progression, each one revealing a new aspect of the same story. From the calm of the shore to the strength of the highlands, Virginia's landscape reads like a poem written in earth and sky. It moves slowly, rises gently, and settles deeply. A geography made for reflection and for rest. At Virginia's eastern edge, land and water meet in a long conversation that has lasted for ages. The state's connection to the Atlantic Ocean stretches across about 112 miles of shoreline, a ribbon of shifting sand, wind-shaped dunes, and calm coastal shallows. Here, the rhythm of the tides writes and rewrites the land each day, the shoreline is not a distant boundary, but a living edge, alive with motion, color, and the soothing sound of waves that never truly rest. The Chesapeake Bay cuts deeply into eastern Virginia, a vast estuary where salt water and fresh water mingle in slow rhythms. It is a place where rivers come to meet the sea. The James, the York, the Rappahannock, and the Potomac all empty into its wide basin. The bay spreads out like a great calm hand, reaching far inland, shaping the very heart of the tidewater region. Its presence brings gentle breezes to the shore and a soft shimmer to the horizon. For centuries, its waters have been a source of life, of travel, and of quiet reflection. Along its length, the Chesapeake Bay helps carve and define several broad peninsulas, each one reaching toward the open water. These narrow fingers of land, the Northern Neck, the Middle Peninsula, and the Virginia Peninsula, give the region its unique character. Between their edges, long stretches of marshland and shallow coves reflect the sky in hues of silver and blue. Standing at the edge of one of these peninsulas feels like being surrounded by water's calm, protective embrace. To the far east lies Virginia's eastern shore, a long and slender piece of land resting on the greater Delmarva Peninsula. Quiet and remote, it seems to belong partly to the mainland and partly to the sea itself. Life moves slowly here, marked by small towns, boats moored at wooden docks, and wide stretches of salt marsh that shimmer in the evening light. The air carries both the scent of the ocean and the softness of the bay, blending them until you can't tell quite where one ends and the other begins. This eastern shore is separated from mainland Virginia by the vast sweep of the Chesapeake Bay, a distance that feels greater than the miles suggest. Crossing the water or traveling the long bridge tunnel feels like a journey between different worlds. One side hums with cities and rivers, the other quiets into open fields and shoreline calm. The stillness there invites a kind of peaceful solitude that feels timeless, older than any map could show. Off the coast lie a scattered chain of barrier islands, slender and shifting. Among them, Assateague and Chincoteague stand out as names both familiar and lyrical. These islands are fragile ribbons of sand, formed and reformed by wind and waves. They guard the mainland gently, absorbing the force of the ocean storms. When the seas rise or winds grow strong, these islands take the first touch of the storm's hand, protecting the quieter waters and marshes behind them. Many of the barrier islands remain undeveloped or protected, wild in a way that few places are anymore. On these narrow strips of land, you can walk for miles and see no trace of roads, only stretches of beach and shorebirds lifting into the wind. At night, the stars emerge unstopped by city light, bright enough to reflect on the still lagoon waters. It is nature's reminder that the simplest landscapes often hold the deepest peace. Over time, these islands move, slowly, gently, in rhythm with the sea. They migrate, driven by waves, wind, and the steady pull of the tides. Sand drifts, shorelines shift, inlets open and close. Nothing about the coast is fixed. The same restless motion that shapes the islands also defines their beauty. In their quiet movement, they teach that change is natural, even necessary. Today, the rising of the sea adds a new voice to this long conversation between land and water. shoreline erosion and flooding touch more places each year, reminding all who live near the coast of how delicate the balance truly is. The sea's patient persistence can reshape even what seems permanent. Yet in its slow, steady motion, there is a kind of grace, the understanding that every shore, every island, every tide is part of a larger heartbeat of the earth. From the eastern shorelines of Virginia, from the dunes of Assateague to the quiet coves along the bay, the landscape whispers in the language of water. It speaks of ebb and flow, of calm and renewal, of boundaries that are never truly fixed. Standing by the sea, you can feel time stretching out endlessly, each wave smoothing the edges of thought until only calm remains. Across Virginia, water gathers, travels and releases, flowing eastward in graceful, steady lines that have shaped the land for thousands of years. Rivers form the state's quiet pulse, connecting mountains to tidewater, rainfall to the sea. Their courses remind us that all things move toward balance, that every stream eventually finds its way home. From ridge to shore, Virginia's major rivers flow east, carving gentle valleys and winding through forests and farmlands. Each one begins in the higher ground of the west, where springs seep from rock and mountain rain gathers into cool, narrow channels. As they move eastward, the rivers widen, their currents slowing as they approach the coast. The sound of running water never truly ends here. It is part of the background music of the land itself. At the state's northern edge, the Potomac River marks part of Virginia's boundary with Maryland and Washington, D.C. Flowing broad and stately, it reflects history along its banks. The Potomac gathers its waters from the highlands of West Virginia, descending through forested valleys before reaching the tidal plain. Its course creates landmarks both natural and symbolic. The nation's capital, ancient fords, and wide bends where the water catches the soft amber light of evening. Along much of its route, the Potomac moves with both purpose and calm, serving as a quiet northern guardian for Virginia. Farther south, the Rappahannock River threads its way through the central Piedmont, a river of gentle rises and soft meanders. It begins in the Blue Ridge Mountains and drifts steadily east, passing fields, woodlands, and old towns that have watched its waters for centuries. The Rappahannock's flow feels modest and deliberate, a reflection of the region it nourishes, peaceful, gently rolling, and deeply tied to the rhythms of nature. Its name, from a native Algonquian word, speaks of flowing water, eternal, patient, always in motion. Downstream, another current joins the story, the York River, born from the meeting of the Pamunkey and Mattapony rivers. Short compared to others but rich in life, the York flows into the Great Chesapeake Bay, carrying both fresh water from the interior and traces of salt from the sea. Along its shores, wetlands breathe with the tides, and herons stalk quietly in the shallows. It is a soft, breathing river, one that blends earth and ocean into a tranquil middle place. Perhaps no river defines Virginia more deeply than the James River, which journeys across the entire state from west to east. Rising from the Allegheny Mountains, the James gathers strength as it moves through the valleys, broadening as it crosses the Piedmont, then meeting the tide near Richmond. Here, it changes character, no longer racing past rocks and falls, but slowing into wide, shimmering reaches on its way toward the bay. The James carries the heart of Virginia within it, from highland wilderness to coastal calm. Always moving, always shaping. Together, these rivers form Virginia's coastal necks, long peninsulas extending between their lower courses. Between the Potomac, Rappahannock, York, and James lie the northern neck, the Middle Peninsula, and the Virginia Peninsula. Each stretch of land is bordered by rivers that serve as both paths and walls, defining life and travel across the centuries. Even today, ferries cross where old fords once stood, continuing traditions that link both sides of the water. As they near the sea, many rivers in Virginia become tidal, their flow rising and falling with the pull of the moon. The boundary between salt and fresh water is always changing, never fixed. At high tide, river currents can even reverse, moving softly inland before turning seaward again. It's a quiet reminder that even rivers, symbols of steady direction, sometimes move back before they move forward. Along these lower stretches, broad floodplains spread outward from the river's edge. These are places of deep soil and quiet fertility, where seasonal floods have laid layer upon layer of life across the centuries. In spring, the lowlands shimmer with standing water, reflecting the wide Virginia sky. By summer, they dry to pasture and woodland again, rich and renewed. Above these bottomlands, one can often see broad, flat surfaces, river terraces, marking former river levels, reminders of times when the water ran higher than it does today. These terraces are nature's record of change, the silent testimony of rivers adapting to new courses, new climates, and new patterns of flow. Each horizontal line across a hill or valley tells part of that long story of migration and change. In the end, Virginia's rivers do more than drain the land. They unite it. Beginning as trickles high in forested coves, they become pathways, histories, and living borders. Their movement is constant but unhurried, a reflection of time's quiet passage. Watching them, one can understand the essence of the landscape itself, fluid, enduring, and endlessly reshaping the world through patience rather than speed. 5. When you look at Virginia on a map, you can almost see the pull of water guiding every curve of the land. Rivers and streams converge like gentle veins, all part of one vast living system. Their direction may differ, but their purpose is the same: to carry the memory of rain, stone, and time toward the waiting sea. Across most of the state, the waters begin a quiet journey eastward, gathering into rivers that eventually drain into the Chesapeake Bay. This great basin is more than a destination. It is a meeting place where the energy of distant mountains dissolves into calm tides. Every drop that falls in the Blue Ridge, every creek that slips through the Piedmont, traces a path that ends softly at the bay's open arms. Farther south, though, some rivers find their own way. Their currents turn away from the bay's embrace and drift across low green valleys, slowly crossing the line into another world of water. These southern rivers drain into North Carolina's Albemarle Pamlico Sound, a vast inland sea of calm, shallow waters. There, Virginia's spirit mingles with its southern neighbors. One landscape, two voices, bound by the same network of water. The flow is gentle, the boundary invisible, But the story of Virginia's water does not only move east. In the far western reaches, high among rugged ridges and shadowed plateaus, a few rivers turn away from the Atlantic altogether. Here their currents flow toward the Gulf of Mexico, beginning a long and intricate passage that stretches across many states before it meets the Southern Sea. These rivers remind us that even within one state, the earth chooses many directions for its song. One of these is the New River, old in age but forever in motion. Despite its name, it is among the oldest rivers on the continent, its course cutting north through the Appalachian Mountains, rather than running east toward the coast. It flows with quiet persistence, slipping through deep gorges carved long before the mountains took their present form. In time, the New River joins the Kanawha River system, its waters continuing westward, winding in a patient arc toward the Ohio, and eventually to the Mississippi. It is a river that defies expectation, quietly charting its own path. In far southwestern Virginia, the Holston River passes briefly through the state. It weaves across narrow valleys, looping among wooded ridges, before crossing into Tennessee, where it continues its long journey. The Holston's passage through Virginia is short, but its presence is unmistakable. A reminder that rivers care little for boundaries or names. They go where the land allows, curving naturally, responding always to gravity and time. Nearby, the Clinch River courses through the rugged plateau terrain, draining one of the most secluded and ancient landscapes in Appalachia. Its flow is slow and rich with life, mussels, fish, and plants that thrive in its cool, clear waters. The Clinch has carved quiet valleys into the stone, creating havens of biodiversity and solitude. To listen by its banks is to hear the mountain breathing, deep, patient, and enduring. At the heart of it all lies the Chesapeake Bay, one of the largest estuaries in the world. Its arms extend deep into Virginia, collecting the efforts of thousands of streams and rivers, holding them together in one broad basin of light and movement. The bay is not truly river nor sea. It is both, constantly changing, constantly balanced between fresh and salt. Within this estuary, freshwater and saltwater mix, blending into zones that shift with wind, tide, and season. The bay's surface may appear still, but beneath it, unseen patterns unfold every moment. The slow dance of river current meeting ocean tide, of clarity meeting depth. This gentle balance allows countless forms of life to thrive. Because salinity changes along the length of the bay, diverse ecosystems take root, from freshwater marshes at the upper reaches to the brackish middle waters, and finally to the salty domain near the mouth where it meets the Atlantic. Each gradation of salt and flow creates a new world. Oysters anchoring to the bay floor, fish schools weaving through currents, birds tracing paths between marsh and sky. Virginia's drainage and water systems are not simply channels of flow. They are lifelines of connection, from mountains to marshes, from one world of water to another. Each stream, each bay, each estuary tells of a patient earth that moves in gentle cycles, gathering, releasing, renewing. And in that movement lies the quiet lesson of the land itself, that water always finds its way, and that peace, like a river, is a steady, unbroken journey home. In Western Virginia, the land rises quietly toward the sky, a slow and graceful ascent into the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. Within this ancient system lies one of Virginia's deepest treasures, the Blue Ridge, a long and patient chain of peaks and valleys that shapes both the landscape and the spirit of the state. The Blue Ridge Mountains stand as part of the larger Appalachian family, yet they hold their own character, soft and rounded, colored by time, their slopes wrapped in forests that whisper with wind and light. These mountains have endured for hundreds of millions of years, their ruggedness mellowed by age, their ridges worn smooth like stones in a riverbed. To look upon them is to see endurance made gentle. They form a prominent ridge across Western Virginia, a natural spine that divides waters, climates, and ways of life. From almost anywhere in the central part of the state, you can look west and see their faint blue outline, hazy and distant under the soft shimmer of the air. The Blue Ridge seems to breathe with the day, the color deepening in the morning mist, brightening under midday sun, and softening again as twilight folds across the hills. In the far southwest, the ground reaches its quiet peak at Mount Rogers, Virginia's highest point, rising to 5,729 feet above sea level. Its summit rests within a cool spruce fir forest that feels almost northern, a landscape of moss, dark evergreens, and frequent clouds. Standing there above the valleys and folds of the world below, the air feels still, pure, and old. Mount Rogers is not a mountain of grand spectacle, but of quiet dignity, wrapped in mist more often than sunlight, content in its solitude. Across the entire state, the average elevation rests just over 900 feet above sea level. Yet averages tell only part of the story. In Virginia, altitude shifts not abruptly, but softly, rising from the east with a steady hand. From the tidewater to the highlands, you move not through borders, but through transitions. Each step a little thinner in the air, a little quieter in sound, a little closer to the stars. In the far western mountains, the local relief is greatest, the measure of difference between ridgetop and valley floor. Here, the earth folds in quick succession, ridges close and steep, valleys narrow and shaded. The terrain holds a certain intimacy. The hills cradle the land tightly, streams confined to slender passes, towns nestled into the rare open spaces between mountainsides. This tight pattern gives the western high country its secluded beauty, its sense of being hidden and self-contained. Within these folds lie narrow valleys set close to steep ridges, shaped by time and water and the slow persistence of erosion. Morning mist often collects in these low places, flowing through the passes like breath. In the evening, you can hear the faint echo of water rushing down from higher streams, a reminder of how every raindrop here begins a long journey eastward. Much of the Blue Ridge landscape is protected and celebrated within Shenandoah National Park, a sanctuary that stretches for over 100 miles along the crest of the mountains. There, forests stretch unbroken for miles, and scenic overlooks offer wide, meditative views across the Piedmont below. The Skyline Drive runs along the top, a quiet ribbon of road guiding travelers through clouds, woodland, and open sky. It is a place for stillness, for watching the light change across ridges that seem to roll forever. Even within these mountains, nature maintains gentle contrasts. South-facing slopes receive more sunlight. They are warmer and drier, cloaked in chestnut, oak and pine. Their soils thin and sun-baked in summer. Their opposite sides, the north-facing slopes, keep a cooler shade. Moss, fern and hemlock find sanctuary there, thriving in the shelter from afternoon heat. These subtle differences shape entire forest communities and reflect the mountain's quiet balance of opposites. And in the deep hollows and coves, where shadows linger longest, cold air pools softly at night. It settles like water, sinking to the lowest ground, collecting dew and stillness. These sheltered places stay cooler than the slopes above them. Microcosms of calm where frost lingers in early spring and mist holds steady before sunrise. Virginia's mountains are not wild in their gesture, but slow, gracious, and composed. They speak in low voices of endurance and patience, of stone worn by rain, of valleys carved by time. To walk among them is to feel anchored between earth and sky, grounded by age yet carried by light. And in their hush, as the day fades and the ridges turn blue once more, the world seems to exhale, a deep, settled peace that invites rest, reflection, and sleep. Across Western Virginia, the land alternates between openness and enclosure, valleys spreading like quiet sheets of green between walls of stone. This is a region defined by rhythm: low, high, low again, ridge, valley, ridge again. It is the pattern of the Appalachians themselves, continuing through time, guiding rivers, forests, and lives. Among these landscapes lies one of Virginia's most cherished places, the Shenandoah Valley. Stretching long and graceful between the Blue Ridge to the east and the Allegheny Mountains to the west, the valley is part of the Greater Great Appalachian Valley, a vast corridor that runs from Pennsylvania all the way south into Alabama. The name Shenandoah carries a quiet music, fitting for a place where the air feels gentle and the land rolls with ease. The Shenandoah Valley is also one of the most fertile farming regions in the state. Beneath its fields lie ancient layers of limestone, broken down by time into rich soil that feeds crops and communities alike. Cattle graze on soft pastures, orchards bloom in spring, and small towns rest between rivers and mountains. At sunrise, mist settles in the valley floor, while the ridges above catch the day's first light, unfolding a scene that feels unhurried and eternal. The pattern of this landscape follows the shape of the valley and ridge region, which runs southwest to northeast across much of Western Virginia. Standing on a high peak, you can see the repetition stretching away into the distance, a long series of high folds and low corridors, echoing the pulse of time itself. These ridges and valleys are not random. They are the visible result of the Earth's patient sculpting, rock yielding and resisting through countless ages. Over millennia, softer rocks such as limestone and shale slowly eroded into valleys, shaped by water and weather. Between them, layers of harder sandstone stood firm, forming the long forested ridges that define the region's lines. The contrast between strength and softness created one of the most distinctive landscapes in North America. A visual rhythm of shadowed ridges and sunlit fields that changes yet remains timeless. In the far southwestern corner of Virginia, the land lifts once more into the Appalachian Plateau. This terrain is both elevated and dissected, a place where the past feels especially present. Unlike the ridges and valleys to the northeast, the plateau's rocks lie mostly flat, remnants of ancient seabeds lifted high by forces deep within the earth. The surface appears even, yet rivers have spent millions of years cutting deep valleys into it, revealing hidden layers of time in each dark and narrow gorge. Walking through these valleys feels like moving along the bones of the planet, stone close on either side, forests above, streams murmuring far below. The air is cool and still, filled with the scent of spruce and laurel. This is a quieter beauty, rugged yet peaceful, where every stream bends and every path seems to lead to solitude. At the very southwestern tip of the state lies the Cumberland Gap, a gentle break in the mountain wall where Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee touch. For centuries, this narrow mountain pass has been a doorway, first for native peoples, then for settlers moving westward into the unknown. The gap is small and steeped in silence, yet its significance is vast. Standing there, you can almost feel the weight of history passing through, one footstep after another, all carried forward by the promise of new horizons. Throughout Virginia's mountains, gaps and passes like this have long served as travel routes, winding through what might otherwise be impassable walls of stone. They remind us that every barrier holds a way through if one looks with patience. Nature, in its quiet wisdom, always provides a path. So the valleys cradle life, the ridges guard it, the plateaus hold its memory, and the passes carry it onward. Together, they tell a story of movement and endurance, of land shaped by time and of time shaped by land. To rest in one of these valleys or stand upon a ridge at dusk is to feel all of Virginia beneath you, ancient, steady, eternal, breathing with a rhythm that matches your own. Beneath Western Virginia's hills lies another world, one hidden from view, carved in silence over unimaginable time. These are the karst landscapes, delicate and mysterious places shaped by water's patient touch. Here, the surface tells only half the story. The rest flows quietly underground, unseen yet always in motion. Much of Western Virginia rests on layers of limestone and dolostone, rocks born long ago in warm, ancient seas. Over ages, these layers have been lifted into mountains and worn by rain. They are strong but not unyielding, dissolving easily in groundwater, grain by grain, drop by drop. The result is terrain like no other, a landscape filled with hidden hollows, sudden sinks, and stairways into the dark. Because of this quiet alchemy between water and stone, Virginia holds more than 4,000 known caves. Some are small, no larger than a single chamber. Others stretch for miles beneath the valleys, where walls glisten with mineral light and the air stays cool and clean. Each one tells its own version of the same ancient story, the meeting of water, rock, and time. Among the most beloved of these are the Luray Caverns, in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. Formed slowly over millions of years, their chambers grow with the rhythm of dripping mineral water. Stalactites hang like delicate curtains from the ceiling. Stalagmites rise toward them in shimmering columns. Sound travels softly here, echoing from pillars and pools. It's a place that feels sacred to stillness, the kind of quiet that humbles thought and expands wonder. Nearby lie the endless caverns, carved not by rushing floods, but by acidic groundwater moving quietly through the rock. The name endless feels fitting, not only for their winding passages, but for the endless patience of nature that formed them. Each drip, each sigh of moisture, marks a moment in a sequence millions of years long. Within the valley and ridge region, the Shenandoah caverns extend beneath the hills and fields. Their sculpted halls mirror the undulating shape of the land above. To stand below and imagine the forest overhead is to feel how deeply connected the underground and surface worlds truly are, one forming the other in a slow choreography of dissolution and growth. Above these hidden realms, the ground sometimes sinks unexpectedly, forming round depressions known as sinkholes. They appear where the supporting rock collapses underground, when an empty chamber gives way to gravity. In these places, the landscape breathes inward, gentle reminders that the earth is as hollow as it is solid. In certain valleys, streams vanish into sinkholes, slipping away into the dark. At first glance, they simply disappear, their water gone without a trace. But underground, they continue, following unseen channels, flowing between rock curtains and through narrow caverns. Some of these hidden waters reappear as springs farther downhill, rushing back into the daylight, clear and cold. For every disappearance there is a return, another example of nature's quiet balance. After heavy rains, the mystery sometimes reveals itself more clearly. Cast windows open, where the earth's crust has worn thin and underground streams become visible for a time. Through these openings, you can glimpse the secret world beneath, water coursing through sculpted stone before slipping back into shadow once more. For a moment, the surface and the subterranean meet, and you can feel the deep pulse of the planet just beneath your feet. Karst, caves, and erosion together remind us that landscape is never still. The valleys, hills, and caverns of Virginia are not separate from time. They are its record, its slow unfolding. Water teaches through patience. It doesn't break the rock, it becomes part of it, reshaping it quietly from within. And in that gentle persistence lies one of the earth's oldest lessons, that even in silence and darkness, transformation continues. Beneath every hill and river valley in Virginia lies a quiet record of time, an archive written not in words, but in stone. The rocks of Virginia preserve a story that stretches back more than 1 billion years, a span so vast that it humbles the imagination. Layer upon layer, grain upon grain, they hold the memory of shifting continents, ancient oceans and mountains long vanished into dust. In the heart of the Blue Ridge, the mountains rest upon ancient basement formations, some of the oldest rocks on the eastern half of the continent. Granites, gneisses, and schists, material forged deep within the earth, still surface here, their crystals catching light long after the forces that raised them have passed. To walk these ridges is to tread upon what was once the foundation of an earlier world, a landscape born in heat and pressure, before life had yet taken its modern shapes. There was a time, far beyond memory or story, when these mountains were titans, rising higher than today's Himalayas. They stood sharp and immense, their peaks catching the first light of ancient suns. But time, faithful and endless, softened their edges. Wind, ice and rain worked patiently through the ages, reducing what was once towering to the rounded summits we see today. In their worn forms, we glimpse the endurance of the planet itself. The way even greatness bends gently to the persistence of time. Erosion has been the sculptor, carving plains from peaks and rivers from ridges. Over millions of years, fragments of those ancient heights have washed eastward, becoming the soils of valleys, the sands of rivers, the foundations of the coast. The mountains are always giving themselves back to the sea, grain by grain, the past quietly becoming the present. Among these layers are stones of distinction, small pieces carrying stories of their own. One of them is Nelsonite, Virginia's official state rock, named for Nelson County in the heart of the Blue Ridge foothills. At first glance, it is modest, coarse, speckled, glinting with dark and light. But within it is a signature of Earth's creative chemistry. Rich in titanium minerals, Nelsonite once fueled industry, its elements drawn from the earth to become pigment, paint, and progress. It is both ordinary and extraordinary, an emblem of the state's deep geological wealth. Another cherished stone is unakite, a metamorphic rock of pink and green hues. Found in the Blue Ridge and along riverbeds, its colors seem to echo Virginia's balance of warmth and forest, sunset and field. Unakite forms when ancient granite meets the forces of heat and water, its minerals blending in soft harmony. It feels both lively and calm, a small, beautiful artifact of transformation beneath the surface. Looking closer still, the rocks reveal signs of worlds even older than the mountains. Marine fossils, embedded in limestone and shale, tell of a time when much of Virginia lay beneath tropical seas. Corals, shells, and ancient creatures drifted in warm waters long before the first forest stood on land. Their shapes, now turned to stone, are quiet reminders that life itself has flowed through endless cycles of change. In places, layers of sandstone preserve the marks of ancient beaches and river deltas, rippled impressions of waves, footprints of long-gone tides. These fossilized textures anchor us to moments that once existed in sunlight, where currents ran across soft sediment millions of years before humans would walk these same shores. And in the limestone valleys, where dissolution carved caverns and hollows, the slow decay of rock has given rise to fertile soils. The very process of erosion that breaks the mountains also enriches the earth below. Crops grow in ground that was once coral reef. Forests thrive upon the remnants of vanished seas. It is all part of one endless cycle: creation, wearing, renewal, played out across geological time. Virginia's rocks are, in a way, a voice of patience. They remind us that the landscape we see today is but a single frame in an eternal sequence. Mountains rise and fall, seas come and go, stone becomes soil, and soil one day returns to stone. To sit beside a weathered outcrop, or to hold a small, time-worn fossil in hand, is to touch the deep pulse of our planet, the slow heartbeat of deep time, steady, enduring, and infinitely calm. Virginia lives within a climate of gentle moderation, humid subtropical across most of its expanse, mild enough for forests to flourish and fields to yield year after year. The air is soft with moisture, the seasons balanced in cadence, summers warm and bright, autumns splashed with colour, winters often kind but touched now and then with frost. It is a place shaped as much by water in the air as by stone beneath the ground. As the land rises westward, the air cools naturally. In the higher elevations, temperatures are lower, and the rhythm of the seasons shifts. Mist drifts along ridgelines in early morning, and the air carries the faint scent of pine. Snowfall touches the mountain regions more fully here, frosting the upper slopes in winter, cloaking forests in stillness. These snowfalls rarely last long, melting into streams that begin their quiet eastward journey. Another thread in the long tapestry of Virginia's natural grace. Down toward the coast, the air grows thicker with moisture, the breezes warmer and more persistent. Higher humidity wraps the tidewater in a soft haze, blurring distances, deepening the greens of marsh and forest. The eastern waters, both the ocean and the Chesapeake Bay, moderate the temperatures nearby, smoothing the sharp edges of each season. Even in winter, the Atlantic holds traces of warmth, while in summer, its breath cools the air drifting inland. It is a partnership, an equilibrium between land and sea. Across this varied climate, forests cover more than half of Virginia's land. From the hardwood stands of the Blue Ridge to the pine flatwoods of the coastal plain, the trees link one region to another. Their colors mark the turning of the year, tender greens in spring, deep canopy shade in summer, gold and crimson brightening the fall. Forests bind soil, cradle wildlife, and soften every breeze. They are the state's quiet constant, the living fabric stretched between mountain ridge and tidal bay. Beneath the western hills, where the land folds tightly into shadow and stone, lie major coal reserves, layers of ancient plants pressed into dark seams long ago. These are the stored remnants of vanished forests, transformed by heat, pressure, and time. For generations, coal shaped the region's economy and identity, its extraction both a source of livelihood and a mark of change upon the land. It is a reminder that the earth's gifts are powerful, and that each comes in some way at a cost we are called to weigh. Across the Piedmont, the land opens again, wide, rolling, fertile. Its soils support farming. Its proximity to cities sustains growing suburbs that blend rural calm with modern movement. Here, houses rise where fields once stood, and vineyards stretch across red clay slopes once ploughed for tobacco. The Piedmont bridges Virginia's past and present, where open land and community continue to shape one another. Scattered across the state are broad, shining waters that appear natural, but often are not. Most of Virginia's large lakes are man-made reservoirs, formed where river valleys were dammed to store water, generate energy, and create places for recreation. Their still surfaces mirror the sky and reflect the balance between nature's pace and human need. On calm days, these waters seem timeless, though they are among the youngest features of the land. Taken together, Virginia's landscape reveals a delicate interplay between geography and human design. Mountains and valleys, rivers and coasts. Each contributes its own resources, its own challenges. Geography creates sharp contrasts between urban and wild areas, between the pulse of cities and the hush of backcountry hollows. Yet in those contrasts lies harmony, the knowledge that both belong to the same living whole. This is Virginia, a place where climate shapes life, where resources shape history, and where land and people continue their shared story. From the mountains to the tidewater, every element breathes in rhythm, reminding us that balance is not stillness but motion, steady, natural, and unending. And as evening settles and the air cools softly across field and forest, the land rests once more. Rivers murmur beneath stars, wind drifts through the valleys, and the long patience of the earth seems almost audible. A reminder that every sound, every silence, every season is simply another verse in the same ancient lullaby of place and time.